Hello and welcome to week 5, and we're going to start off week 5 with DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. Um, and I ran into some trouble with this with the Udemy classes yet again. Um, I'm kind of losing faith in these guys a little bit, so let me just bring this up over here and show you where I'm at. This class that I had picked out is about 4 hours long, and it's important that I show you that because this class had to be replaced. I got about 10 minutes into it, and I realized that this guy, um, he has a little bit of a Middle Eastern accent, and that's fine. I got no problems getting through that. But he was speaking really fast. He was terribly unorganized. And by the time I got 10 minutes into his hour-long video of just the tour of Fairlight. The sound portion of DaVinci Resolve, it was terrible. I was confused. I didn't know what he was talking about. So I went looking for something else. And I did find something else really nicely here. I found these guys over at Low Post, and I watched their introduction to it. He has no accent whatsoever. Everything is also about 4 hours long. I don't know if you can see that or not. And I got to looking down here, and it's basically the way that it should have been organized to begin with here. And beginning with organization, oddly enough, and I'm going to leave it there. So I paid you can see I'm a member, and there's just a ton of other uh, videos to be had here. Color grading. Oh my God, it's $79 a year. That sounded like a deal to me. Bunch of editing, sound effect. There's a companion class to the one we're doing right now. At Fairlight Fundamentals, there's a Fairlight Advanced class, which I'm excited to put into the companion class for this one that you're watching now. And I realize I'm kind of blabbering on, but I'm kind of basically justifying my opinion for getting rid of the Udemy class. So they're both 4 hours. I think this one was much better. And let's just kind of jump right into it since we're right here. And I'm going to put this on pause for a second and get over to what he called his terrible page. Okay, so we also now have the ability to show you pages. Um, just as a quick demonstration, I wanted to show you this page. We now have the ability for you to see live what I see as I go through this course. I'm not going to be using that as a crutch, but I do want to show you from time to time something cool that, for example, this guy calls this the disaster page or the terrible page or whatever it was. But what his point was is before he even started any of the classes, before he started the tour of Fairlight, he wanted to belabor the point of saying be organized. And he made the point also of saying over and over again, of saying that being organized as sound is much more difficult than being organized at video. And I believe him because there's so much more to that. For this example alone here, there's a voiceover, there's two on-camera voices, there's music, there's several tracks of effects, and they were so nice to give him nothing but a bunch of sound clips with numbers straight out of the camera that mean absolutely nothing. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. So I'm gonna when on the tour portion of this, I guess we could just jump over here right now. On the tour portion of this, I already have his really nicely done um, user. What's the word I'm looking for here? The stuff that he wanted us to use. I'm sorry, I'm a little aphasiatic as usual. I can come up with the word aphasia, but I can't come up with the word assets. Whew, sorry about that. And so he has not only has he labeled each clip, but and we'll get that to in a second. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but it says AO1, and that doesn't seem like a name to you, and you'd be right because there's That's the file name. And there's some cool stuff that we can do. We can go up here to Fairlight. We can come down to View Clip Info Display, and he has the file name highlighted right now. And there's a bunch of other stuff you can do, whether it's the equalizer or stuff on it. But he's gone through the trouble of naming them, and so we'd like to see them because that'll help keep us oriented. So we're going to move that down to clip name. There we go. We can right away see um, how things have been done. I mean, I'm not going to zoom in and out right now, but so not only has the track been labeled and color coded, and the clips all labeled appropriately. This is his version of being organized, and there's even some organization where he got this bit of sound and video from another program that a lot of people operate in from Avid. I don't remember the name of it, but they have a very strict color coding system. So I'm going to adopt that for myself. Just if I ever work in the field, this is what they've done for things: voiceover orange, on camera voices blue, music green, and stereo and FX. So we get the idea that this is definitely an important thing for the whole organization process. So much so that he did this before he did anything else. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one here in just a little bit when we get started with a tour of Fairlight as done by our new guys. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, and we are back, week 5. We are going to be over here on lesson 2, understanding the Fairlight interface. In other words, it's the tour once again. And as we recall, I have a policy on doing tours. So let me bring this up. And that policy is that I'm happy to show you all of this. And we're going to go through. I actually had to make some notes here because his was very, very comprehensive. And I didn't want to miss anything. But he also did a lot of explaining. And I like to wait till we actually use the tool to do some explaining because things become pretty self-evident and you get kind of more memorable, at least for me, um, on that. So where did we start? We started at the very top at the transporter, knowing that we all recognize this here. Um, Play, fast forward, fast reverse, stop, pause, loop. And these two little guys over here are automation controls. And he didn't go into explaining any of that really. He said it gets its own uh, pretty much full on episode. So I'm excited to see that. Um, and then the clip selections here that you can go into and find out all kinds of stuff about the clips if you just give it a double click here and come across and find its time code and what it is, what kind of format, and what have you, and the video that it's associated with. I thought that was kind of cool. And as a part of this too, we're going to be talking about some timeline stuff here in just a little bit. So the zooms of stuff. As we come over, if I remember right, is it in timeline or is it trim? Uh, yep, lost my mouse there for a second. Okay, zooms. Here we are. I'm sorry about that. So two ways to zoom things here. You can zoom things vertically and you can zoom things horizontally. Vertically, just over here in the old edit page, we could look at things here on the line just as a quick click back and forth here, and that there was 3 ways to look at something where we could dial in heavily, dial out, see everything, or kind of have a little custom zoom. Well, over here, it's important to be able to see the waveforms more so than anything else. Hence the vertical zoom and the horizontal zoom. And I'm not sure if there's a. It's too bad that it doesn't look like there's just a restore thing. Oh, maybe there is. No, that's just bringing it all the way back down. That's too bad. Okay, so and then we can zoom up and down here. I'm just using my mouse scroll wheel to do that. And then he was talking about a timeline JKL trap, and that's what he's talking about is the JKL forwards and backwards as you move across a clip, and it's easy to get caught up in that. As of course we don't suffer that because we have the jog shuttle wheel, but he also makes a good point here in showing us this, and this is the displays of things. And one of the things that he was talking about was cool to display is that you can come down and use the scroller and it brings it all the way to the bottom and you can see the video frames. This is frame by frame and you can associate that video with an audio, as you can see here, that is also frame by frame. So 1/24th of a second in our part, for example.
She said I was dull, ordinary.
And that you can see more than one audio track if you want. So what are we on right now? Let's get up here. We're on A1 voiceover. So let's move A1 voiceover to that track. Okay. And then we can, let's get rid of this one here. And so we are looking at this thing in the timeline here, A1 voiceover. Yeah, and you can set it to wherever you want it to be on the voiceover, on camera voices, whatever you want, and have up to 2 at a time. Also, at the very bottom, let's get rid of the video. We don't really need that either at the moment. So, boom. We're looking at one thing, and we're looking at frame by frame here, and able to just kind of scroll through that really nicely to be super accurate, which is, I'm told, going to be very self-evident here pretty fast. Okay. Once again, is this the A1? I don't know why that wasn't set on A1 for the first one. Silly. Okay, so what's next on our list of things to do here? So we took care of the JKL thing. Obviously, that's not a problem we suffer with using our keyboard and our jog shuttle. I'm now the proud owner of 3 of these keyboards and the small speed shuttle that I showed you guys once, just to be on the safe side, to never ever not have this as part of my toolkit immediately available to me. So I have one of these on both of my editing machines, a third one for my backup, and a fourth one that's the little one that goes with it's right in my bag with my big laptop whenever I want to go out running around. So, okay, so we got the JKL thing sorted out. Timeline audio 1 explanation, which it looks like we've already did. That was just when we had this down here and in the scrolling. And I showed you where we could have whatever track we wanted in there, and it was bit by bit. Yeah, so I'm going to come back up here and say we're good with that guy. Scroller, timeline, all through this stuff. You can look at things in different ways here. And as piece by piece comes up, we'll explore each one of these in more detail. Okay, so let's come over here and highlight a clip, and then come over here and look at it on the inspector. And so these are the things that we see on the inspector with our clip that's highlighted right here. And these are things that we can change through the inspector without having to go over to the effects tab and then click and then drag something on. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is just look at the inspector and see that, yes, we can control the volume easily. Yes, we can control the pan or the left, right sides of a piece of stereo or something. Voice isolation, dialogue leveler, the pitch control, and we can even change the speed of things and do a little bit of equalizing, which is very cool that you can get through some basic stuff. And all this is also available over here in the edit tab. As you can see here, let me just twirl the whole thing down in the edit tab. All this stuff is available here as a part of the sound. There we go. And a lot of folks edit their sound from here, and the sound isn't that big of a deal to them. It's just nice to know that these are some things that we can do pretty readily without having to really get terribly deep into it. Okay, so let's twirl this down. And one of the things that we're going to mention here is that I only have two screens here for this. Had I been working on this on my other big machine in the back, I would have, I have three monitors on that, and I would have all this stuff all over the place on those monitors, being that um, the main screen and the meters is one of the ones that we'll look at the most. But we're going to look at metadata next real quick, and then we'll get back to, we'll go across the top and talk about all that stuff. But meters, very cool and worth waiting for the last part about it to understand that. So metadata here, just as you would expect, you can add, change, view, whatever metadata has come from. We know what its frame rate is only because I have our master frame rates locked in now, so everything gets turned over to that. What the information is from the clip itself, I mean, pretty smart. Our mixers, and we'll twirl the mixers over. So this would be a great time to talk about the difference between a clip right here, a track right here, and a bus is a combination of tracks. So the track is over here where it says voiceover, for example, on A1. Somewhere it probably says voiceover here too, like right there. And so when you do any kind of changes with the mixer here, you're affecting all the clips on the A1 track. So as we get down the road later, we'll be able to meld a couple of the tracks. For example, um, if you have some, all these pink is sound effects tracks. So you might want to change all these tracks over onto a overall bus. Maybe not. I'm not quite sure, but it just depends upon the thing. That yes, we know that if we had a bunch of tracks, we could bring them all into a bus. So that's the three levels: clip, track, bus, and really important to remember. Uh, Bearing in mind here that I'm saying this more for me than I am for the viewer right now. Okay, so metadata. Um, screen organization. Yeah, he was talking about. So every time we're done with something, put it away. It's really easily to get into a lot of trouble in a big hurry and run out of space. So if you don't have a set of multiple monitors, then yeah, then that's kind of a thing that's going to happen to you for sure. All right, let's get the list here. We're only about halfway through. Media pool, let's make sure that everything's put away. How can we tell? If it's out, it's lit and it's down. So let's go over here to our media pool here. This is just the media pool like all the other media pools are, where you can do an in and out if you want to. You can see it in different ways in list format. I happen to like this little format here, or you can see it with all the information with it. Bringing in footage, bringing in stuff just like you would in any other of the media pools. Okay, enough of that. What's next? Media pool, time code adjustment. So within the media pool, there's time code. And one of the things we wanted to go down and find was rough sound. And I'm going to pause this for a second and go find that. Well, that's kind of too bad here. Along this, somewhere in there should be a thing called rough sound. And to click on it, timelines, keywords, no, footage, no, master, no. Well, that's unfortunate. Uh, Maybe we can look it up. Okay, file name. And it's not showing up. That's too bad. Because within the thing rough sound, we were able to go down through the list here and bring into footage. That's a shame. Keep looking for that here. Reference video. Yeah, everything's alphabetical. So what he did was he clicked on it and he was able to sync his timeline up with the time code precisely. And I'm going to work on that and get back to you later on that and move on so you don't have to watch this video all day. Time code, rough sound, window adjust size. So we did start a little bit about the mixer introduction here. Let's jump out of the pool altogether. And so on the mixer here, to go down it, uh, and that's another thing that's weird about this one is he had some equalization that was kind of done and not done, but you can, when we change something on a track, we can either add it to a clip or the track. Remember we talking about that? So when we add an effect, we can do that here. We can change where our sound comes from here, left, right, front, back, a little bit on the reverb kind of thing. Obviously, we can solo or mute our tracks or whatever all the way through there. And somewhere we are labeled here and change your labels, track name, and where the track comes from. So this is set up just exactly like any other digital audio workstation is pretty much, and it would be very easy for somebody that went, for example, from Avid Pro Tools or something to this would look just the same. I know that's true because I'm in that course right now. All right, so what's next on the list here? The effects library. So this is super cool. We're going to come over here and click on the effects library. And remember, we said we got a lot of stuff that we got to make sure we keep twirled up. And we didn't need to see the whole thing. But as we go through everything that we can happen here in audio, Fairlight effects or VST effects, VST are free visual and sound effects that can be downloaded and added. As you can see, I have downloaded some stuff that I was using on Premiere Pro that was kind of okay, but it also came on here, which I thought was nice, and we have that capability here. But as you can see, the effects that come stock with Fairlight are fairly um, fairly lengthy. I mean, there's a lot of options to have here. Okay, so when we come across this stuff, we will use it. And I may shoot some of this on my back machine too, which is a Mac Studio, and it's especially good at the some very special sound FX that I've added to it from a company called Crumple Pop that are stunningly amazing, especially because I shoot on the back of a motorcycle all the time. That I'm able to mix the sound of the motorcycle and my voice as I'm narrating the ride in real time with all the wind problems and all that stuff that you could possibly imagine. It comes out sounding studio crisp. It's really something. Okay, so let's jump out of effects. What's next? The index was very cool. And I'm going to make a little bit more room for this so we can kind of see everything. So on our voiceover, we can lock things down just as you might imagine, so it can't accidentally get changed or moved or any of that stuff. And then over here in the format tells us that 1.0 tells us that it's mono, 2.0 tells it a stereo, and all the way on up to 3, 4, 5, 5.1, and so on, up to 7.1, which is full on surround sound with bass and all that other nonsense. Of course, these are named to know where you're at. And something that's kind of cool with this is you can, if you're, say you're like just working on the voices here, let's go over here. And I don't want to see any of this other stuff. All I want to see is my voices. I don't want to be confused by anything other than what I'm working on at the time. You twirl that down here and you're back over to just the three tracks that you want to deal with. So back to that. Let's put everything back in shape here. Cool. Okay, so that's kind of the name of that tune. Again, here, I'm going to twirl that down and mix meter index sound library is something that's not really done here. You have the ability to go out and download libraries here. I thought I'd save this just to click download and see what happened here. Support center here. Looks like it wants me to log in. And he said it took a lot of time to do this. So I may do this here in a little bit. So let's jump out of this for now and jump back to that and twirl that back up. Dink. And let's look at the last thing that I'm really excited about here. So that's the uh, that's the meters tab, and this is something that he says that pretty much everybody has open all the time. So you'll note that we have 10 tracks going, and so as I move across, and you can see all the levels here of the individual tracks, as well as all of the master track level, as well as the control track level, which is kind of a loudness level. So important for the loudness level as, excuse me, on that here, um, that as we send things out and I get better at this, I'm stammering on this a little bit because I need some more work on this, and I'm sure it will be explained that the loudness levels, your videos will get kicked back to you if you have clients that have very specific needs, like television, for example, or specific needs for your clients that are really into having the sound correct, if they're a band or what have you, and it's a video. Um, I'm not sure how the control room thing works yet. Again, that's another one of the things that he didn't get into much either. And what was it? I'm missing some stuff here. So, oh, yeah, I don't know. We did go across this a little bit. Here's just some other ways of putting some grids onto things and time versus scale. That's something that's going to come up when it comes up. I don't really understand how it's going on right now. Uh, these are selectors for um, how things are selected. So, for example, here you'll note that that's a focus mode, something or other. He didn't go into that at all either. But he basically just kind of stuck with this. Obviously, this is cut. This is snap. This is link. That's the portion I think that links the sound to the video. These are flags and markers that we talked about that we'd be using at great length here. Uh, he didn't talk about this at all. We, of course, did talk about the zooms. And he says this, he tells us this is where we're going to spend most of our time here with the meters up and as we need to get to things. Oh, ADR, that was one last thing that he kind of left as a mystery for us, is something about automatic voiceover type of thing. Again, I'm kind of glad that he follows suit along with let's not beat everything to death right out of the box. So that's going to be section 2 here. And I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. Sorry this took so long, but there's a lot of stuff to cover in this. And we will see you in the next one, section 3. Thanks for listening. Hey, and welcome back to week 5. Let me come on, bring up over here where we're at with everything. So we're on our new zone here, low post, post-production training specifically for DaVinci Resolve, and that's DaVinci Resolve 18. And we're down our list. We're on number 3 on our list over here. And it's worth saying that each one of these are about 15 minutes long, and it takes me about twice that to 3 times that amount of time to process that and really get to know what he's doing. So that said, let me jump over here and go over what we've just talked about here in the basics. So the first thing in the basics, he was talking about moving around with your mouse. You remember how we came over here and we said that you could zoom in with that and you could zoom in out one way vertically, the other way horizontally. Um, and that's, I guess, a little dangerous. So we're going to learn how to do this with the mouse wheel. And and one of the first things to remember here is that Shift Zoom. Maybe I should come here and put my keyboard on. Shift Zoom brings it back to where it was. Where we were kind of out of shape over here and couldn't see anything that was going on. If I hit Shift Zoom, brings everything back. Shift Z, Zoom happens to be marked on the keyboard here. Uh, bring that up. I don't know if you can read that or not. Kind of. Kind of. I tried to do a little static focus on that rather than a dynamic, let it focus itself. Seems to be working a little better. Anyway, so what's next on our famous list here? Um, Alt and mouse wheel. So when we hit the Alt command over here, or Option if you're on a Mac, and give it the mouse wheel here, see how this got bigger and smaller horizontally. And then if we come up here and we hit Shift and the mouse wheel, it gets bigger and smaller vertically. And then again, we can always go back to Control Z to bring us back. Make sure we're on our thing, Control Z. And that brings us back to the center of things and kind of the standard sizing. Okay. So Shift wheel, expand vertically. The index. The index is a handier thing than one might have guessed. So when we go up here and we click on index, we come up and down here with all of our channels we've got open or all of our tracks that we've got open. And one of the things that he pointed out that we could do, suppose, but I haven't tried this yet, is hold our index finger down and just click all the eyes off by dragging over them. So I'm going to try that now. That's pretty trick. Let's see if it works the other way. Oh, that could be handy. I mean, if sometimes some projects get big and they have lots and lots of tracks, just like this little one, and it's just a few minutes long. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 FX tracks on here, plus a main bus. So that's cool. I like it. I don't know. Okay, supposedly, let me get back out of here where we were. Supposedly, we can use our middle mouse button, which I guess is our track our roller, because this is a PC. I think they are talking about middle mouse button for panning. Oh no. My mouse button, if I push on either side, the mouse button pans down. That's cool. So I could see where, uh, I could still scroll through here very nicely. There's a lot of space here. If I scroll all the way over here, it appears that there's a lot of time. And if that's actually a scroll. This is a jog, so it's going back by seconds. Anyway, let's get back to the tile. And it looks like my home key works as well. Okay, let's get back over here. This guy, let's use our things to zoom in on him because he's next. Did I forget anything? Double click on the bar. Okay, so we're going to talk about some dialogue here, and we're going to talk about these two pieces of dialogue here. So let's come up to our index and do that cool thing again and just get rid of the other tracks for now. And come back out of index. And now we just have these three things to look at, so it's not quite so overwhelming. But it looks like we still have some things to mute. So let's solo this. By solo, it means that we're going to play this track and this track only. Now you can add things to a solo list, like we're over here. And let's solo those two as well. That's the dialogue between those two guys. Between these two guys talking up here. I don't know if you can kind of see it.
Johnson. You know what I have here?
I'm not really good at guessing things, Dave.
Okay, so you understand that everything that's been soloed is what you're going to hear and nothing else. So I'm just going to pop those out for now so we can just hear this. And the first thing is to get a grip on loudness. So I'm going to hit my Alt key and widen this up a little bit. And then I'm going to hit my Shift key, and with my mouse wheel, I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And then by raising my finger off of the Shift key, I can bring it back in place. You know, it'll just scroll up and down on the tracks here. Probably don't want that way. Okay, so when we play this, and let's pay special attention to up here on this level, on the meter level here, and just play it real quick.
My wife left me. She said I was dull, ordinary.
Okay, so what he says about all tracks of dialogue, whether it be a voiceover like this one, or whether it be an on-camera voice, you want them all, as a general rule, to peak at around -10 dB, which is up here for that. Probably hard to see, but so let's go back to the beginning here and make sure, as anytime when we come into the inspector, we have to make sure that this is highlighted. Right now, you notice that it's not highlighted, and if we bring the inspector up, nothing's happening here. So when we highlighted that, it brought this voiceover of Paul. You can see it down here, where this is named VO Paul, voiceover Paul. And so it tells us up here in the inspector voiceover Paul and gives us all these wonderful things to look at. So as we play along here, let's go and look and see.
My wife left me. She said I was dull, ordinary, predictable.
So probably a little quiet across the board here. So I'm going to roll this over just a touch so that we can see both the inspector and what we're working on. I guess we can twirl the inspector. Look at that. It doesn't give me an opportunity like it does everywhere else to twirl the inspector out of the way. Okay, so we're over here on volume. And 8 here, and I don't know if we can see it down here. Let's do right click on this and see what. Okay, so the clip is enabled. Attributes, the color. Okay, so it doesn't give me much to look at there. Maybe let's go over to Fairlight and see bus format, bus assign. View clip info display. So we can put down here volume, source, and equalizer if we wanted to see that. Say okay. And so now down here on the clip, you see where it says 8 here and it says 8 here. That's an important thing to remember where we're at. Because if we came here, if we see this little line here, this line here is set at 8. If we drag this down and up, it'll come up and down over here in the in that as well. So if we wanted to start from 0 per se, we could, instead of just dragging it down and dragging it up, we could double click on that, and that's going to start it at 0, which gives us a good place to start that we know what's really happening on there. So let's play this and see what it looks like against the meter here.
My wife left me. She said
okay, so that's pretty low. Now, if I remember right in here, he came in here and he changed this rather than twirling it up and down, and he changed this to 13.5. Let's see how that goes and hit enter. And now you can see both up here and down here.
My wife left me.
Okay, that's a little tall. Let's try it at try to 11. See, my machine must be a little different from his, so that's interesting.
My wife left me. She said I was dull,
or maybe I'm not doing such a good job here. Let's try it at 12.5.
My wife left me.
Okay, that's pretty good because it's when it comes much above 10, it gives us that red.
My wife left.
So it's coming a little high still. Sorry for the stuff here. Back to that. Want it to peak at negative 10.
My wife left me.
I think we may have just discovered something.
My wife left me.
Okay, so we just punched in 10 here, and it just peaked at a little over 10. So let's play on and see where these other ones peak and see if we're as close there as we are here.
My wife left me.
Okay, that was on the money.
She said I was dull,
That's low.
ordinary, predictable,
That's
a
low.
creature of habit.
That's low. So the next thing he showed us is that we went over here and we're going to break this into its 4 parts. Okay, this is one clip right now. We're going to come over here and say Control B.
She said I was dull.
So you notice we made an individual clip there. I'm going to say Control B. We made another cut and another individual clip. Control B. Okay, so now we have 4 clips here to look at. So when we come over here and we look at VoiceOver Paul here,
She said I was.
that's pretty low on this one here. On VoiceOver Paul here, it was very low as a matter of fact. Okay, so another trick that I'm showing you guys right here, by the way, it doesn't matter if you're going backwards or forward over this. Right now, we're just looking at levels. It's going to make the same amount of noise, but we just have our mouse and we kind of scroll back and forth. So let's move this 10 up to 12.5. Let's see where that goes with, oops, Control Z. I'm on the wrong clip here, excuse me. Okay. And then move back and forth and see how we're doing.
My wife left me. She said I was dull.
Okay, so let's go back over here and raise this guy a little bit more. So that 12.5, when I was doing this by hand, just went to 13.7. And that looks pretty well right on the money.
She said I was dull, ordinary, predictable.
Okay, we're a little low here. Let's highlight this version of this. And I bet, and the other thing you wanted us to do is wanted to come over and say Shift. Excuse me, Control. And when we raise these two, because if you look at them, their waveforms are about the same size. So even there, they're a little low right now. Okay. Let's change these both at the same time from 10 up to say 12.5 and see what happens. That's pretty well right on the money. So let's go back and forth and play the whole thing.
My wife left me. She said I was dull.
Okay, so this is still a little low here.
Also,
so let's move this to 13.5. Excuse me. Gotta make sure we're on the right one there. Taking my own advice, right?
my wife left me. She said I was dull, ordinary, predictable, a creature of habit.
Okay, not bad. So one of the things he doesn't mention here, and it's only because I've edited a lot of video together over the years, is that one of the things we should look at here is if you notice that most of these waveforms are about the same size. Okay, kind of retracking here, we were able to highlight both of these guys together at the same time by using the control key and control both of their volumes on this clip, these 2 clips, at the same time, both by raising this bar or scooting across back and forth on this bar or just typing it in. I think sometimes typing it in is a lot less fiddly then going up and down with this. See, it seems like there was one other thing he wanted us to look at. Let me think here for a second. No, I think that's it. I think that's what we were talking about when I showed you the index column. I forgot all about that until I read it in my notes. So for now, I think we did a pretty good job of getting through this, through the basics kind of okay here. And next, we're going to be going on to another 15-minute display here, doing a voiceover. So we have a really nice microphone that I'm hoping that OBS, I'm sure OBS has kind of hijacked. So we're going to be just talking our way through the voiceover. I doubt we'll actually be doing one since I only have the one microphone. And when OBS is running, it locks all of its resources down. Like it locks the speakers down, it locks the cameras down, it locks the where they can't be used for anything else, and rightfully so. All right, so that name of that tune, guys. We will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Okay, still here at week 5, and now we're going to start the voiceover stuff here. And there are 3 of these guys that are voiceover specific, but these two next to LO4 and LO5 go together really nicely. So that said, let's kind of get after it here. And I think I got it pretty well put together, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to hook the microphone up, and I had to test this to make sure that it was going to work with the OBS stuff so that you can see and hear everything that we're doing, and then I can actually do it because sometimes the resources between for recording microphones and things like that, especially with OBS, tend to get a little territorial with its assets. So moving right along here. So the first thing we have to do is we got to start a new track because that's where we're going to record our voiceover to. So let's. I think I showed you on the index before how that we could start all these things and we'd see them all here, right? So in order to make ourselves a little room to work with, let's bring those all the way down. Just leave the top one here, voiceover. And now we've got some space underneath of this to come down here and right click on it. And we're going to add a track. I only have one mouth, so we're just going to call that a mono track. But as you can see, it could be a stereo track if we had more than one microphone, or surround sound tracks or whatever. But right now, just a simple mono track will do nicely. And then the next thing we have to do is go and tell Fairlight and DaVinci. Fairlight is the accompaniment program of DaVinci that takes care of all the sound stuff. Is we've got to click on that, and then we've got to come down here and tell it what's happening. Just like you would if you were in a regular TV studio or a sound studio, you have to patch things together. You have to patch microphones to inputs, and then inputs to the computer, so on and so forth. So patch and input. Then right over here is if we highlight that for just a second, it tells me what microphone we've got going. That's my Rode NT USB Mini, a nice little microphone to be sure. And so we have to click on it. And then we come over here and click on audio 11, which is and you can see the white outline around it. We come over here and we click on audio 11, and it also gets a nice little white outline. If you don't see that, then you've got to come over here to track output and tell it where you need it to go. But there's plenty of places for it to go. So you just got to be sure you know what you're doing. And then you say patch, which is the digital equivalent of taking the wire and plugging it into the patch cable. Okay, so we're done with that, and we're now ready to make some recordings. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to mute this top one. Then I'm going to mute this bottom one too. I don't know if you're still going to be able to hear me. Can you still hear me? It looks like it looks like on the OBS thing, I'm still seeing the microphone there. And then I'm going to have to arm the microphone. And it still looks like it's recording. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up here. This is a much newer version. I shouldn't say much newer version. It's newer maybe by a couple months, and they've changed it. So when you're ready to do a thing in the past, they'd have you arm it by saying play, then you come over and say record. Not the case anymore. Just when you're ready to go, hit record. Okay, this is a test. This is only a test. Had it been an actual recording, we would have informed where to go and what to do. Okay, so let's roll that up a little bit here. And so the next thing we want to do here is we've got our recording. Let's come over and listen to it to see how it sounds. I'm going to take it off of mute. I'm going to take it off of record because we're getting my voice in there too. Okay, this is a test. This is only a test. Had it been an actual recording, we would have informed where to go. Okay, I bet my levels are a little high, but so let's do this again. But instead of going through all the trouble of making another track and all that stuff, let's just do it again. Okay, so we got our record armed and we're ready to go to come up here and hit our record button at the top here. This is a test. This is only a test. Had it been an actual recording, you would have been informed where to go and what to do. Okay, so let's let's right click on that clip and let's call it a different clip color. Let's make it orange. Make it orange. There we go. Just so that we can distinct between the couple of these things here. And we're going to make one more just for good measure here real quick. This is a test. This is only a test. Had you been informed where to go, what to do, because it's a test, okay? Okay, so not so brilliant, but we get the idea. Let's make that one red because that one sucked. Clip color. Violet. Okay, close enough to red. So what do we got now? We got three takes right on top of one another. And so what's cool about this is that we can come in and we can deal with all of these takes. So for starters, let's take this one out of the poll here. Think, and let's come down and see if we can and it'll let us mute everything in the same way we did by turning its eyes off. So we don't have anything over that it wants to do. Okay, so let's get back out of index and come back over here. And for some reason, we can view it a couple of ways. That we can show where to go. Show audio track layers all as one or all together or as one. Now you'll note that some of these layers that you see underneath, that's because they're a little bit longer, but they're all just stacked on top of one another. Let's go back to view and say show audio track layers. And the thing to know about this is that who's ever on top is the one actually getting played. So let's go back over and get rid of all that stuff here. So we're clean. You're hearing me and I'm hearing you and everything is good to go. So first off, let's kind of trim things up a little bit. So let's bring this along here. Twirl this in. Twirl this one in too. Twirl this one in too. So we got that done. And then let's do the same thing over here. I notice it's not doing a great job of snapping, even though my snapping thing is on. All right, close enough. All right, so then let's come over here and let's cut it in a couple of places just so we can shuffle things around. Control or Command and B. That should bring it all the way down the layer there. Or not. Okay, let's try this. Let's highlight all of them. And then say Control B. That should split them all the way through. Again. B. And that just to have something to kind of work with here. All right, so If we want to listen to things, we're going to get the one at the top here. So let's try it out, see what we hear. This is a test. This is only a test. Had you been informed where to go, what to do, because it's a test, okay? Okay, so we probably don't like that one at all. But the bottom two are pretty close together. So let's, just because we can, show you how to get rid of that. Highlight, delete, see ya. Okay, so the bottom two are pretty similar now. And there's some neat stuff that can be done with this. If you, while you're doing, like, say, lots of cuts and you've got somebody with some talent, and you're going to take these over and over again and color code them, which is a great way to organize your work, you can say that orange represented the CJ's smartass version of doing that, and or the green version was CJ's really nice, courteous version of doing that. Make yourself a little sticky note, put it on the bottom of the monitor. You know where you're at with things. There's, I don't know, a dozen colors to or so. Yeah. Including clear. Yeah, it looks like there's plenty of colors to get through the range of emotions. Beyond that, I imagine you'd have to start doing things by time code. So here's some cool stuff. So say this first part of this is okay. This is a test. This is only a test. All right. Here's a neat thing we can do. Let's grab the bottom one here, and you can just grab it and bring it up. Now look, we've swapped places here. Let's try it again. This is a test. This is only a test. This is only a test. Had it been an actual recording, you would have been informed where to go and what to do. Okay, again, do I hear my own voice? No, that's in my head. Sorry. Get my ears done there. So that's one of the neat things you can do with that. As also you've seen where we can cut it and do everything together. As far as the inspector goes, we're up here, just like we were before. I swear to God, I'm hearing my own voice. How weird is that? At any rate, I know that I've muted everything. Just to be on the safe side, let's mute you too. Okay, so just be understood up here that wherever we are and whatever we've highlighted, even though it's still stacked, is, see, that's, I accidentally moved that line up there a little bit. It came out here. If I come up here, that should still be 0. Cool? All right, let's reset that back. And that's pretty much the long and short of those two together. There was a couple other little things about the Mac and some house cleaning stuff with the Mac that you have to enable the microphone under the sound tab, and then you need to go to the privacy tab, and then you have to give permission to DaVinci to use the microphone. And then there was another tab in there somewhere. That you had to go through and okay the microphone or being a part of the system as well. And those are part of the Mac OS, not part of DaVinci. And that's pretty much that for now. So we're a third the way through, guys. And I sure appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next one where they've apparently automated the whole voiceover thing. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. Anyway, see you in a little bit. Hey everybody, welcome back to week 5. We are on skill 6 over here with the ADR basics thing. Now, ADR basics was one of those things that when we were going through the tour of this, I came up here and I said, I don't really remember what that stood for. And so I had to say it and write it on my imaginary chalkboard 100 times because it stands for automatic dialogue replacement. And this was a pretty good video, and this is a neat thing. Unfortunately, I have a couple of problems with demonstrating this, so I'm going to just kind of go over it real quickly and explain what's going on. The first problem I had about demonstrating this was in the video, he had some resources as far as audio tracks go and video tracks code that were not included with this class for some reason. I've left a comment on their forum about that, and in the future, if they do post that back here and give us the soundtracks, which he obviously has because he made the video about it. That'll be great, and I'll redo this video and demonstrate it for you. The other thing, when I was kind of setting this up and screwing around here, trying to learn it myself, which I kind of did, and I think it's really slick, but it's something that's meant for a professional movie studio or some setting like that, because this is really some advanced stuff here. And so I'm going to just go over the basics of what this really does. So let's get out of this, and I'm going to go start back to the beginning here, and I'm just going to set things up for you. Delete this track and go up and just start and just show you how I set everything up. So in the beginning, there were all these tracks over here, and we'll close the index. And you notice that I've made these tracks a little bit bigger, and I still have my tracks down here from Audio 11, which is where the other soundtracks would have gone had we had access to them. But we didn't. So anyway, the next thing he did was he came over here to index, and he got rid of everything, and he muted everything except for Audio 11, which in this case would have held the replacement tracks for track 1 up here, which was this guy here. Maybe I can just play this real quick for you. Let me solo this and get rid of that. Mute this.
My wife left me. She said I was dull, ordinary, predictable, a creature of habit.
Now, I probably could have remade these tracks, but this was such a complicated thing. He had a script. There's all kinds of stuff that needs to come in here, and that really should have definitely been some provided footage for us, and I'm a little disappointed that it's not. So let's get rid of this and go back down here, and we'll talk about things some more. So that's it for the index for now. Let's show what he did. I'm just going to walk through what he did immediately. So he disconnected his viewer down here, and because he was trying to make himself some real estate, and I guess it's not going to let me make it smaller, but so he turned off his meters, and he had his viewer over here in the corner, and on his viewer it was showing this and the people talking, so that when you were replacing these tracks, that's what it stands for, don't forget, because I had a hard time remembering it. It says automatic dialogue replacement. So on that note, let's click on automatic dialogue replacement and see that there's a couple of things here that we got to set up: list, record, and setup. And on the first thing was to set the pre-roll of this, how many seconds before this thing comes on here and shows you that it's time to speak, okay? And then a post-roll of that. And then the second problem that I ran into was when I went to do my record source, it asked for a record track, and we haven't done that yet, so let's do that real quick. So let's add a track, say it's a mono track, and let's just rename this track something here. New VO, I think is what he named it. New voiceover, just to, whoops, new voiceover, just to be consistent here. So, and the setup here, we have a place for it to go. So we have our new recording track and our guide track, which would have been where that was stuff to go. So we would have known what we're replacing and we could have seen it. And there was some highlighting to be done here too. So we knew exactly what the waveform looked like, what was being said, and so on and so forth. So the third part of this little thing was to come up here and pick her microphone. Now, the first time I did it, it did not allow me to come here and pick my Rode mic, but this time it did for some reason. And as you can see and hear in the background, I'm going to mute it out now. Yeah, we're recording as we see fit. And then we had some other neat stuff here of the count in, which comes up here as and I'll show you something else that's really cool about this here in a second too. But it comes up here and it counts you in, 7, 8, 6, or 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start speaking the dialogue. Boom. Very cool. So the next thing here was in the list of things. Uh, you can make a cue, and with the cues on them, um, we'll have the dialogue where you can go and highlight and write in here with what you want to use for dialogue. Hi, this is a test. This is just a test. So you can type that in there, and when it's time and it's counting you down, um, the dialogue will actually appear over here on the screen with the countdown. So you have everything to match just perfectly with that, which is just, I think it's really cool. And I'm really bummed out that we didn't have the ability to demonstrate this. That said, though, on the record thing, and after we're done here, there was some ways here that you can, okay, say like you're going on and you're making the replacement recording to go over your dialogue. You can have as many takes at it as you want. It'll automatically name the file based on some of your dialogue that you've typed in below to cue yourself nicely. It's really taken all the pain and all the brain work um, out of doing some redoing a voiceover, and especially if you wanted to sync up a voiceover. Um, I'm excited to try it. I think they're very good about getting back to us, and I'm gonna circle back to this and remake this video with the like I said, with the exact way that he wanted us to do it in. So let's look at some more setup here real quick. And so we have the file name is left blank or whatever you want it to be. It doesn't matter. It's going to name itself. Um, the character setup, so we can say, well, who was this? This was Paul's voiceover. At least that's what it's labeled as on the screen for itself. And you can label as many of these as you want. This here I think is very cool. This is my spelling device. It's now inserting itself into this for some reason. Uh, Smart timeline and mixing controls is something that he did not get to with this. What else can I tell you about this? The record list. I think I told you about this. I think that's about all I can really say for now. But count on this getting circled back around because this was a very cool piece of technology. But I think it's also a piece of technology that is kind of above and beyond the call of a basic thing here. This is something you would see in a real studio, and yeah, I'm looking forward to showing you this. Okay, so that's LO6 Skill 6, the quick tour with CJ, and we'll see you in 7 here in a little bit. Thanks for listening, and I appreciate the patience with me. Okay, and we're back with LO7 in the basic mixing stuff. Let's get over here to kind of what I've got set up, and let me just go through the example that he showed us, which was pretty long but pretty simple. He did a nice job breaking this down for us. So the first thing we're going to do is our index page. I would have never begun to think how handy this is. So we're going to get rid of everything down here except for the voiceover and for Sound FX1. So let's get rid of all that too. And we're back over here. Let's get our index out of the way. Back over here. These two guys. What else did he do? He got rid of the meters just so that we could come in here and make these a little bit bigger. So I'm going to, because we're going to be working with this specific guy right here, I'm going to make these a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to, oops, excuse me, center them up a little bit. And make some more working room here. What could I do here to... Okay, so we're doing good here. Okay, so the first thing we gotta do is let's have a quick listen here and see what we got. So let's get rid of our mutes. Let's maybe go back to the index, and it looks like everything already was muted, which is good because we only want to hear these two things.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home.
Okay, so that's soloed. We don't want that. We just want to hear these two things.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent.
Okay, so you guys get it that this is the voiceover here, and then this is the background noise of the restaurant that he is in, supposedly, or whatever the case may be here. Yeah, it looks like a restaurant, a Burger Max there, or whatever it is. So great. Let's start by doing it the old way. So mixing is a matter of equalizing our volume up here and then getting this volume down here to the restaurant to a level where it doesn't interfere with the voiceover, but still lets you know where you're at. So what's going to happen is we're going to come in here just to kind of the quick overflow. And we're going to break this one in here into three pieces. You see how these two end pieces are bigger? That means that they have a little bit more volume than the centerpiece here does. And then we're going to come down here and adjust the volume of this. So we'll bring this part of it up a little bit. And then when the voiceover comes in, we'll lower the volume in the restaurant a little bit, and we'll use a couple of different techniques to do that with. First one's just going to be simply chopping it up and raising and lowering our volume lines here. And we're going to be looking into the inspector all at the same time. And then the second one here, we're going to come down, and we could do this with the first one too, but just for expediency, we're going to keyframe the volume on this. And there was one other thing he was going to show. We were going to show. Oh yeah, cut and pasting with sound settings along. So let's get it going here. So our first mission is to come to the middle of it here and say Control B. We make a cut there. Yes, we did. We didn't want to make a cut all the way across though. I'm going to Control Z that. And we're going to just do this one. Control B, come over here. Control B again. You see what I did there though, is I just highlighted, whoops, and messed it up again. I just highlighted the one I wanted to clip since I don't want to clip the sound effects below us yet, because that's a different cut. So now we got three cuts here. And let's listen to the volume difference between these three cuts and solo this to do that. And let's open the inspector while we're doing it.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having.
Okay, so I've gone through and I've set everything to 0. And then over here, we're going to judge it on our meter. And the first part about this is,
The highlight of my week for the last decade was.
okay, so this is obviously going to be louder than this one is here. So let's bring this guy up first to where we think it should be.
The highlight of my week for the. The highlight of my week.
A little tall.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at.
So this guy here, a little bit taller. Here, and my always rule of thumb is when we're doing stuff like this, is you can kind of get a feel for it by the size of the waveforms compared to the other ones.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest.
Okay, so here's the other thing here. While the other quick thing we're going to see here is we know that this one and this one are approximately the same to begin with. So I want to come over here. I want to do a quick right click and say copy. And I want to come over here and highlight that and say paste attributes. All right, so what do we want to paste attributes? We haven't messed around with the plugins or an equalizer yet. So the only thing we're going to paste over onto it is the volume and say apply. So if we play this back now, we look over here, this is at 1.3 up here in our inspector. This one also at 1.3, excuse me, should be. Then the middle one at 7.8. So if we play these across the board, it shouldn't sound too bad.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's put away the inspector for a second. Bring up our mixer, excuse me, bring up our meters and look at that and see where we are with things. Come on.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's.
Okay, so we can see that needs to come up just a touch more.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay, I'm pretty happy with that now.
The highlight of my week for the last decade.
Maybe a little tall here.
Was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller
Peaking at
is my
negative
date.
10 dB, pretty much across the board. We're liking it. And it was a clunky way of doing things. So let's get rid of our meters, but at least we got it, okay? So come over into our inspector here and some of the things that we can do in here. So when we, for example, we click on the middle one here and it comes up here to the volume. This volume right now is looking at this one specific clip. Now, when we come over here and we highlight all three of them, you notice that it has changed to multiple clips. And one of the sleek things that they don't really say, even if you mouse over it, is that you can change the volume of this up or down as a whole relatively to how we have set it now. So comparatively to one another, it's about the same. But if we were just, for example, a little shy of our 10 dB and we had to pull all of them up, we could come over here and put our mouse on top of it, put our index finger down, and then change the relative volume for everything. Okay. Now, when we just put it on the meter there a minute ago, we knew it was pretty much the right thing. But
the highlight of my week for the
now
last
we're
decade was
peeking
having
right through
lunch
all
every
of it
Sunday at
across.
Burger Max, home.
So let's just that was a neat little quick hack. Control Z back to where we were.
Of the world's greatest hamburger.
Very tip
the
top
most
of that
recent
yellow
bestseller.
is always that going to be that negative 10 spot for us. Okay, so now we're down here. Let's stop soloing this. And let's come over here. And start looking at this down here. So what I would like to do is that I would like to change this volume. Now we're going to hear everything.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's great.
All right, so the whole thing kind of needs to go up a little bit. This is really powerful in reference to this. So just for fun, let's raise a whole bit and see how that sounds in relationship to our the things we've already mixed to the voiceover here.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch.
Okay, so it's a lot, but there's a slick way of doing this. Now on all of our stuff, we on this one long clip here, this FX clip here, and we stay within our clips. We could, for example, just to make it easy on ourselves, come over here and say Control B. Over here on the other side of the clip, and say Control B2. So we have a new clip here that we can work with in relationship to the voiceover that we've just edited to the way we like it. Now, if we want to come over here and start this right here, let's drop come up here and drop excuse me, I hate that. I'm going to drop a keyframe. There we go. That was rough. And then maybe back off a little bit. I got the snapping on. I need to take that off. Then maybe back off a little bit, drop a keyframe there. Then come to the other side and drop a keyframe here. Blink. And drop a keyframe here. Blink. Another one of the things that he said he wanted us to do is to jump in here up to the top. I almost forgot this. Sorry about that. So let's zoom in real quick. Is on the top here. We wanted to clean this up a little bit. So let's bring this in. Let's bring this in. Clean that up a little bit. Then on the top on all these guys here, let's bring in our little bit of fade back and forth between things. Just a touch. It's a little tiny bit. Little tiny bit. Little tiny bit in and out. In and out. Whatever the transition is, it softens it a little bit. If there's any mistakes on the tail end of it, I might have brought that one in a little bit too much. But you remember when we got to the end of here and we clicked on it, we see our handles just like we see our handles in the video. So let's see our handle over here. And do we need to make a little bit more of a handle? Just a touch, maybe. And that's a nicer. There we go. We now have a little fade in, fade out on everything. We now have our keyframes in place. And so the keyframes being in place, guess what we can do now? We can just grab it in the middle and drop it down a little bit. We can grab this guy here if we wanted it to start sooner or later. And hold the shift key down and move it back and forth. Oops. Not what I had intended to do there. This is very delicate. Guess maybe that'll teach me to put something so close to the edge there like that. Okay. So all I did was basically kind of by hand scoot my. Okay, so I finally have gotten a hold of this, and what I don't want to do is I don't want to change the current volume that's at. So I can hold my shift key down, and you see it moved it from that little four-pointed square, that little four-pointed side, up, down, right, left. And I hold my shift key down, and now I'm moving it backwards and forwards. So I've just moved that without changing the um, the volume of where it's at now. Okay. Also, the same thing can be done for going up and down. So if I wanted to just go up and down without moving its position and time, we can. Okay. So let's come back a little bit here. Oops, sorry. Where we can see the whole thing. I had to set my mouse to this special little. All right, so let's play everything together and see how it sounds.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay, so I think for my purposes, I'm going to change this to a little bit closer to. Let's see where we are when things start here. Okay, so we're just right before that, before things start. And maybe we'll move this guy a little bit back. Oops. We'll move this guy a little bit back. just so our sound can start right before the dialogue does and can end right as the dialogue does as well. Over here and put our playhead on it to see, kind of use that as a guide. All right. And I also think that when you grab the middle here, our volume can go up just a touch. All right, let's give it another quick play and see how we go.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent
Okay,
bestseller
that's
is my date.
keyframing. I was a little clumsy with it, but that's the quick and short of it. Now, keyframes are something that I use all the time. When I started screwing around with the video stuff, the 360 cameras were making it come out, and through a company called Insta360, if you wanted to edit anything with a 360 camera, you had to keyframe, and that whole concept took me a minute. But all a keyframe does is change an attribute of video or sound um, over a period of time. So this is marked in a period of time, so it went lower here and then raised back up over here at that period of time. That's all a keyframe is. There's nothing to, excuse me, there's nothing to be intimidated about it whatsoever. So to go back, we've done some keyframing with just volume. We have softened our transitions with a little bit of uh, kind of keyframing, but it's really just it's really a transition. Okay, just to kind of again big out like we saw when we were editing footage before in the DaVinci class, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So I think he did scoot in on something here. Maybe oops, excuse me. He went way in on this guy. Yeah, when he showed it, there was he really brought these in. So to kind of zoom in there and really get a good feel on those guys, he really went out of his way to bring them in there nicely. So, anyways, just so that you can get myopic about this if you want to. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm starting to ramble here. I'm excited to show you the keyframes on stuff like that. Once somebody is good at the keyframes, it makes life a whole lot easier with everything in editing, sound, or video. Okay, so that was LO7, Skill 7, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening. Sure do appreciate you. Okay, I'm back, and we're on automation, which the long and the short of that story is this, that when we come over here, you'll notice I kind of reset everything. You remember when I set the keyframes last time? This is kind of a way of automatically setting keyframes. I have yet to really see the wisdom in it, but I'm going to run through it anyway. Maybe this is a chance for some feedback from you and saying that if you had this, what would you do with it? So uh, let's get it set up. So we come up here, these little guys. Remember, I said I didn't know what they were for either. Well, now we're going to bring that home. So this is the turning the automation on. So let's do that. And this is bringing all the tools in for the automation. I don't know why it required so much. But there's a couple of settings that we need to jump in and do before we do this. So up here at right, there's a right and a trim portion of it. The trim would be an editing of something that's already done. For now, we're just going to mess around with the right because we're just starting with something we don't have anything to edit yet. Over on the touch section of this is snap and latch and snap latch. I think that I have a newer version of DaVinci than when his was recorded, even though we're both on 18. So he kept his on latch and said that they would be back to the snap and whatnot later. The same with the hold thing is about when you what happens when you stop it. So if we're going to leave it on hold for now. But for example, if we were on return, and we stopped it, it would return back up to this baseline where the sound starts and ideally finishes, but that's another thing. And the event is on our editing here. And if I got this right, I'm not sure I do. I'd really have to play around with this to honestly to see the wisdom in it, because I can keyframe this a lot faster than I can go back through and mess around with everything. However, on the event thing, that if you let go of it, meaning that you raise and lower your index finger on your mouse there, uh, what how it affects things, meaning that when you run into another event of something that's been labeled, whether it returns up or keeps going or whatever, it'll make sense here in a second when I start all this. And on the last thing on this list of tools is today we're going to mess around with the faders. And you'll note that I have arranged it where I've got this voiceover here and our fader showing on our mixer for that. And the effects, the sounds of the restaurant here, we're showing our fader for that. And then we have our main fader next to it. But as we're recording, which is basically what this is, and I changed the fader down here, uh, that it will record itself on here. Again, not so certain why this is such a necessary thing yet, but I'm hoping the wisdom of it will come soon. So down here on our FX levels, what we're going to be changing, so we need to tell it what part of this we're going to be changing, whether it's the fader level, whether it's the pan level. For example, if we were on pan, right, left, front, back, we can come up here to the um, the pan level here of all this stuff and show that where it's going to go. But this stick for the fader right now because I can see that this I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm just going to try it out and see where we start here and hit the. I'm going to give ourselves a little lead in time, and I'm going to hit um, the space bar, stop play, and then when it gets over here, I'm going to drop it down a little bit, and then it's going to play over here to the end. Then I'm going to bring it back up, and then it's going to write a bunch of keyframes. So let's see how that works. Okay.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. Sometimes I stay for hours.
Okay, so when we zoom in on this, what's happened here? I'm not even sure I got the volume right between back and forth with one another, but you can always touch it. Negative 3 dB, negative 6. All right. Well, anyway, close enough. So let's zoom in on this here, shall we? So what it's done with all this is when I moved it down over here on the fader, it wrote a ton of keyframes. And then I got down to the bottom here. And then when I jumped out of it, it wrote a ton more keyframes. Okay. So that's pretty much the long and the short of this. To go to it any further would be beyond my understanding yet because they didn't tell us where it fits into things. So creatively speaking, keyframing is going to be an easier thing because you'll note that I could have dropped 4 keyframes on this and had this happen much faster than to be monkeying around with all the automatic stuff. If I were to set something that were automatic, for example, where I could tell it, okay, in relation to my, when this certain thing comes on here, I need you to drop this other one by a certain amount. That would be automation to me. This is just another way of doing a keyframe that seems to take a little bit more time. So I'm kind of begging for your input on that. If you see something in here that you think would be more interesting than I should know about, I'd sure love to hear about it. Okay, so that's kind of that for now. Automation, maybe it will become more clear later or in the advanced course of how we can better use it. Okay, so thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay, everybody, and welcome back. We're still on week 5 here. We're over here in working with the buses tab here. We're on skill 9, and we're moving along here pretty good. I really love the way things are set up. Each one of these is approximately 15 minutes, so I can watch it and get a good idea of what's going on, and then come back and give you guys a pretty decent synopsis of it for the most part. And I say for the most part because the other day we were dealing with a thing called ADP, automatic dialogue replacement. So just I understand everything that was happening there with that, and uh, but what I wasn't understanding was how we could fit that into somewhere creative. So I went on YouTube just to see what other people had done, and I didn't find a single video save for the Blackmagic design people who are the creators of DaVinci Resolve had done a whole Fairlight video that had some of the ADP stuff included in it, and they were only using it to make a convenient way for actors to go back and revoice over some audio that may have been either damaged environmentally, or somehow the director didn't like what he saw, so he wanted to have it redone. At any rate, it is not a tool for the average Joe, and I was kind of relieved to see that. So anyway, that said, here there is going to be something coming up when we talk about buses today, and a bus is mostly um, it's a conglomeration of a bunch of tracks. So, for example, when we look at this, which is our current operating thing, we have a bunch of FX tracks, and then we have some music tracks up here, then we have a voiceover track, and then we have an on-camera track. And so, one of the things about doing buses is it allows you to consolidate these. For example, since there's 4 or 5 of these, there's 5 of them. We consolidate this down to a second bus, and you'd think that you'd just, like I'm used to Avid Pro Tools, which is a terrible piece of software, but I'm used to it. So you just make another track and then you link everything over to it. It's a little bit nicer in Fairlight as how that's done. And it starts with going up to the Fairlight tab. And then we're going to come over here to bus format. And you can see that we have one bus right now, which is our main bus, which has everything that we've done down this line attached to it. So let's make a new bus, and we're going to call this a sub bus. And we're going to make this mono here because there's all the stuff that was done on all the FX were recorded on a single mine. There's no stereo out there. There's nothing heavy duty. So we're just going to stick with good old mono. One channel. We're going to say okay, and we have our new bus. Now you'd think that something would have come up down here. Not yet. And in fact, it's kind of out of the way. So in order to get things organized here, we come back to our Fairlight tab at the top, and we come down to bus assign. And so this is where kind of the magic happens. So right now, everything is signed down here. You can see each one of the tracks that we have that are over here are represented here and are colored here. So, and you can see where they're assigned to. So we have the burst voiceover to the main track and so on. So the first thing we got to do here is we got to unassign everything. Click. So it's all grayed out. There's nothing one or the other here. So let's start with highlighting our sub, and you can see that the white letters are now brighter than the other track. So we know that that one's the active one. We come down here and we click along, click, 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 click. And we now see that these sound effects tracks are all added to our sub track 1 because it has the S1 on it. So let's go back over and, well, let's talk about organization here for a minute. So you'll see that there's a sub track 1 over here as well, and that's going to be important because when we come back to our main track, everything else is going to be added to it, including the subtrack. So everything has to have somewhere to go. So we didn't just want to just click on everything for both, because the point of this was to have somewhere called the subtrack that's controllable. So if we needed to make any kind of alterations, additions, adjustments, we could do that just to that sound effects. Or we could make another one for the music and do just to the music. So the whole point of having a bus is to be able to make adjustments to a bunch of tracks um, all in one fell swoop without having to do them all individually. Okay, so let's get back to the same one here. We're going to first add our sub track to the main here. So we see that that's been M1'd here in the bottom and then back along here as well. We just keep going down the line here. And so we see that our tracks we wanted to go to sub 1 are, and then our tracks that we want to go to the main are, and then our sub track is going to the main are. And then we just say close. That's all there is to it. So how can we make some sweeping changes if we had to? Well, first off, I think we can come over here, and I don't know if it's going to open all the way or not. Uh, well, let's look it up here in the meters. I think we have to, we're going to do that. We got to come over here to the index, and let's just get some of the stuff out of the way so that we can see it. And you notice in the index, we see down here main and a sub. So let's just leave all this stuff here for now and come back and look. Do the index and come back and look at our mixer. And we can see now that all of our stuff is going to be controlled. All of our sound effects tracks are controlled by our sub track here. That's kind of like this little section of tracks. It's master track. So that's the fader that we can use to control on that, or whatever else we assign to it in this case. So yeah, let's get that back up here to 0. So don't make any mistakes that way. Let's close this. So what else? Let's come over here to the mixer. Oh, excuse me, mixer. Let's come over here to meters. And now note that we have two main buses now here, or we have two buses. We have our main bus here. Then we have our sub bus here, which covers all of this. Okay. And this isn't going to come up this way. It's only coming up this way because I had taken some of the indexing stuff out there just to add that back so it makes sense. So we're back looking at the the meters, and now that has been added. So when we see this down here, and we've made some changes down here with sub 1, here you see how slick that pulled out there when I just pulled out the corner of it without having to pull out the whole thing. That was an important thing that I just now discovered. I think that's very cool. So that's kind of the long and the short of that. And then the last thing to talk about here is how do we change? Is it programmable? Because we can't come up here and just, you notice we don't see it down here. We can't highlight this track and come up here to the inspector and think that we're going to put down keyframes like we would in a clip. That's not really where that's at. What we can do here is we can activate the automation. And when we do that, you then see the main bus and the sub bus that we know is assigned to these guys. So if we feel like it, we could come over here and we could add the fader to it. We could, just do it like we did yesterday and make whatever changes we wanted to make to anything, whether it's the fader, it's pan, equalizer, compressor, whatever, and can all be kind of mock keyframed that way. Anyway, it's possible to make some whole things with it, which might be handy to learn how to program that down the line. I'm going to let you know the second that I feel the need to do that, then I will show that off. Right now, I don't feel the need to do that other than maybe by hand. We never can tell. Okay, so that's pretty much the working with the buses speech for today. I'm trying to keep these a little bit shorter so it's a little bit easier on you. And we'll see you in the next one, which is going to be audio bouncing. Yeah, can't wait. Okay, thank you. We'll see you soon. Okay, we're back, week 5. We're on to skill 10 now here, which is, what are we doing here? We're doing audio bouncing. Okay, let's put our screen up and see what we're doing. we're moving right along here pretty nicely. I keep saying this. I just love how this is set up, and the fact that it's kind of put it all together in bite-sized pieces that make sense to me. So I don't know how much everybody knows about bouncing and stuff like that, but in my sound class or school, when you bounce something out, you are selecting an area of whatever you sound editing you've done, and you are basically just converting it to a MP3 file or a WAV file or whatever kind of file it goes out for later consumption, or to put back together with another track or whatever. And that's fairly pretty much the same here. So I had to kind of break down a soundtrack clip here into multiple pieces to really show you this better. So let me kind of bring this in here. Notice I'm getting better at scrolling around here so we can see this. It's just easy peasy back and forth here. So a couple of the things that I found that were kind of cool about this, whereas I'm going back through here, and this is an adding machine. Let me just play this for you real quick. I'll come over here and yeah. And so on this up here on track 9 has been our uh, our meter here, and then of course we're looking for a peak level of -10 for each one of our pieces. And I found a good trick as I was going through here. So um, when I take my jog shuttle over here and I move it back and forth over it, I kind of get an idea just quickly of where, if it's peaking correctly somewhere or not. So when I come over here to this guy, I see that I have a little bit of work to do. So I can come on over here and bring this one up. See that it needs to come up a little bit more. All I'm doing is, whoops, I want to do that. All I'm doing is wiggling my jog shuttle over it. Nice one. Moving along. Still pretty low. Now, each one of these has been a little bit different when I went out and broke them down. So they see still this guy was a little quieter. He's even going to, oh, all right. I'm just going to jump through these because this doesn't really matter for the sake of whatever's going on here. Let me just play this real quick and just take a second. So that's too tall, way too tall. It's still peaking a little too hot. Okay, we're looking pretty good all the way through here now. Okay, so what we're going to do here is you see that we have this markered out from here to here, and I don't think we need the keyboard in there anymore. Let me get rid of that so we can see this better here. And so the first version of a bounce is this, is we're going to come over here and we have everything highlighted, and we're between the thing, and we have our track highlighted. That's an important thing here. Not highlighted, highlighted, track highlighted. And we have our clip done here as well. We have our clip highlighted as well. So the first thing we want to do is you'd think we go over to Fairlight, but not so much. We come down here to timeline, and we say we have two options here in timeline. We can say bounce selected tracks to new layer, or bounce the whole mix to a new track. We're going to do both of these here. So let's do this one first. So bounce selected tracks to new layer. Boom. So you come over here and you look at this and you say, oh no, it's gone. I've overwritten it. But don't forget what it said. It just said new layer. So let's go back over here to view. Come down here to, where were we? View, am I in the right place? Show audio track layers. Yes, just like we did with the voiceovers. So we have this big layer here, which is the one we just did, which we now have the ability to uh, change its volume and everything all at once and whatnot. So we're no longer, since we had our individual pieces of this larger piece all individually tuned up perfectly. Now, if we have to do anything as far as levels go or whatnot, it can be done as one piece rather than going back and doing this however many times that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 10 times, 9 times. Okay, so that's the first thing. And so to get us out of here, I'm just going to highlight that layer, say boom, come back up here and say down to view. And we're back here out of tracks. And I want to be careful here. I want to go all the way back through here and make sure that we have just this one guy soloed. We don't want to enter anything else in here because the next time we come up here, we're going to come over to timeline and we're going to say bounce mix to track. Make sure our track is done. Make sure we're highlighted here. Come to the highlight bounce mix to track. And so now we're on the sub one here, and we haven't told it where we want it to go yet, but we're going to do a new track. So we can come along over here and just say new track, click, and then say OK. And zippity doo dah, we have bounced our new track to here. And then the next neat thing after this is, so you have this neatly put away here, off and running. And again, it's just basically a copy of what you had up there. So we can highlight this, come over to the media pool, and somewhere by highlighting this, you see this sub 1 mono 0001 that's highlighted. And we come back over here and we see sub mono 001 that's highlighted. That is the same track, meaning that we can right click on that and put it anywhere we want. We can move it out from there, um, uh, whatever we want to do. We can copy it and put it somewhere over onto the desktop or whatever, way away from here. So that's kind of the long and the short of bouncing. So we got, let's just kind of go back over it real quick. So we got the 3 bounces. We got the bounce from here to a layer. We got the bounce from the timeline. We got the timeline bounce to a new track. Boom. And then we got another bounce out to the computer outside of Fairlight and outside of DaVinci Resolve for that matter. Okay, excuse me. So I think that basically covers the bouncy bounce for now. And we will see you in the next one coming up, which is more stuff to do with the setting up the deliverables. You think you'd just put it together and ship it off? No, it's more complex than that, and we're going to be using some more buses to get that done. So we'll see you guys in just a little bit. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you soon. Okay, so here we are back once again, and we are right now over here doing steps, skills 11 and 12, and it's basically getting things ready to be delivered sound wise. And this was beyond the fundamentals of doing sound for sure, by the way. And but at any rate, just kind of bear with me. Well, let's get through it. And it's going to be, these two were enough of a thing where they separated it in here even. So we had some setting up to do. And that setting up started with Fairlight bus format, and we had to create some buses here in order to do kind of a mass um, export to get a master file done here that you would deliver to like a television station or something along those lines. But it gave you a lot of room to deliver it in a lot of different ways. So the first thing we did was we came back here and we set up a bunch of buses here we have 3 main buses, main export bus, a mix minus bus, then this will all make a little bit more sense in the next screen here, and so on and so forth. Down, we have a voiceover, we have our on-camera dialogue, we have music, which is a stereo, and I'm glad I caught that. Clink. And we have our FX, which is a mono. These mix minuses here should be stereo because they have the music included in them down the road a little bit. So that was a nice catch. And then this is a music sub mono. I guess things are still done that way from time to time, where there's a group of mono things done rather than stereo. I don't know. That's what he said in the thing. At any rate, we should probably make some colors here that are just a little bit different from their neighbors, just so that it's easy on the eyeball to take a quick look at. And yeah, just to kind of keep it easy. There we go. Let's do the last one in brown. Okay, so we've got that going for us now. Let me go through and make sure we've got everything correct here. Okay, we're looking good. So let's say okay to that. And then, of course, along the Fairlight thing of doing that, we next need to assign all these things. And this was the more complicated part of the whole thing. So these are the subs here, or the tracks, the available tracks up here, and then the buses that we've created for that. So along these lines here, these are the subs that we've assigned for um, the voiceover, mono, the on-camera dialogue, the music, the FX, and then there's a music for the mono thing that we talked about. Kind of, I'm not quite sure how or what he's doing with that, but again, like I said, far beyond the basic thing of what we were doing really here. Then, of course, we have a main export here. That's kind of a no kidding thing, and then a mix minus export, which is one of the things we're going to be adding here. And when we come down here, you can kind of see where everything is. So our voiceover track is, where is it assigned? S1. That's our bus, S1. Our our bus, it's S2, is the uh, matching sub for that track, and so on and so forth. And then the mixes for music are on two. They're on S3 and S5. The S3 is music stereo, and the S5 is music mono. So it makes sense that you would see both of those subs right there. Okay. And then the last guy here is all S4 all the way across because S4 had 4 tracks. Now, as we go down here to the voiceover track, we did that on the voiceover sub is just the M1, the main track. The secondary version of that is the OCD sub and mono, M1, M2. That's the mix minus track. That's the main export, mix minus track. Okay, then the music export here has all 3 tracks in it, which is M1, M2, M3, and includes everything along that line. Sorry, I'm not being as clear as I can with this. With the music track, it includes the main, the mix minus, and the stereo. M and E track stands for music and effects. And the last guy over here, FX sub mono, also includes all 3 of those that have already gone up to that point there. So we've just now got a clear mix, or kind of a clear mix. I'm not explaining it that as well as I should be, but we now have everything all set up as best we're going. I don't know why he did that or left that out. Maybe that'll become clearer to me later. But when we went out after we've set everything up here in this very complex way, and we move over here to go to the export of things, the deliverables, And we come over here to video. Of course, we named something. I just named it week 5 mix, just to keep it simple. And then over here, the location is going to run out to the desktop. Now, in his version of things, he did it with his was done on Mac. This happens to be done on my PC laptop here, uh, which is a real badass Alienware laptop, so it's kind of handy. Anyway, so I had to change formats. So he did it on a ProRes RAW because, or not just a ProRes format, Macintosh ProRes format, because that supports 16 um, tracks. Now we only have 8 tracks, but this also supports. I just happen to know from working with some of the Avid stuff that the DN by HR format will also support that as well. And so moving over to the audio, we come down here and we set up our output tracks, and our bit depth was 16. So when we come here and we just click down, we have to realize that whenever it says stereo, that's really 2 channels. So output track 1, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8 and 9. Okay? So we have 9 channels there all the way out so far. So I haven't tried this yet to run it over to see what it does. But in just to kind of, before I try this maybe disastrous experiment, when he did it, he did his in RAW. He's on a Mac. He was able to bring that file back in and bring it back into DaVinci and DaVinci Resolve, and it showed all the tracks that were done and all the levels for it were done. So fingers crossed. Here we go. I haven't done this yet, so let's move it over to the queue. Hit render all and see what happens. This should be relatively quickly. This thing is really fast. And there's not a lot of complicated stuff in here. Sound is easy. And there's no real effects on there, just a couple of transitions here and there. Okay, getting close to being done here. Couple more seconds. And it's completed, or so it says. Let's drop it down and see what we got. I don't see it's where I put it. You drop all this stuff down, maybe it went somewhere else. So I got a bunch of really weird stuff that when it happened here, I didn't know if that was going to work or not. And it looks like it did not do what we wanted it to do, which is unfortunate. But that said, though, I might pause this and try it one more time in a different way. So I'm going to do just that. Hang on just a second. Okay. Okay. So after some work here, I figured out a combination of things that works for a PC to put this thing out. So I chose for the video, I chose the format of QuickTime, and I changed the codec from H.264 to 265 because I think that supports more audio tracks. Then we went over here to audio and then put everything out the way it was kind of supposed to go here. It didn't really do that great of a job, but when as far as labeling things goes, but that's just kind of the way it goes for now. At any rate, this is the best I was able to get done with the what I learned about it. But so when I went back and tried to put it in and play it, it did, amazingly enough. And it looks like it's got all of its tracks in stereo, even though that they didn't get named. Its sound effects.
With Price Waterhouse back in the early 80s.
That's the
when the Global
voiceover.
recession.
There's the music.
Couldn't be more average.
And there's the on-camera dialogue. So it looks like we got everything. I mean, this was really clumsy on my part, but at least I got it to work, and so nobody will ever doubt my will to try and get this done one way or the other. So the other thing we learned today, for sure, is that we do all of our sound stuff in the other room on the Mac. And and speaking of that, there's some great sound tricks that when I'm doing the making of all this stuff and assembling all this stuff back together for you guys, um, there is some things that I use because of the way I film. Uh, I film off the back of a motorcycle. That's one of my main, just kind of hobby blogs, video blogs, is off the back of a fairly large motorcycle on dirt roads, on highway, on everything, live narrated with a microphone on my helmet here, and then a 360-degree camera at up to 70 miles an hour, and it sounds like I'm talking in your ear. And that's via some of the unbelievably cool plugins that I've gotten from Crumple Pop. It's a good camera that syncs well to a very good remote microphone that's DJI, just basically, and I have it on in record mode. It's not even transmitting to anything that I just clip on my helmet strap, and I've got a dead cat on it, and it works like a charm. And I will post when I post this. I'll post a link over there to that where you can see the complicated editing that's happening with that, um, as well as the sound that's remarkably good. Anyway, that closes this out for these guys. This was quite a thing and was not, in my mind, remotely basic at all. Anyway, thanks for listening. See you soon. Got a few more to go, and then we're done for the week. I hope you're well. Thanks a lot. Okay, so here we are one more time, back with week 5, and we're on skill 13, which is working with the equalizers. So I think that most people have given equalizers way too much thought. It's pretty simple stuff. It's the first step in the process of what we do to taking a piece of sound and making it sound uh, better, or making it sound how we want it to sound. But it's kind of the shape of the sound. And the first thing to realize is that when you see the line down here, and when you look up and you play something, you see,
The highlight of my week.
right? You see the master level jump up or the track level jump up. It's measuring the sound. So this little bit of sound that you're seeing way down here is really low frequency sound. It's low background noise. It's far away. It's barely hearable, but it's low frequency. And then when we come through here, there's other frequencies between, say, 20 and 20,000 hertz that sometimes contain something that you'd like to enhance, and sometimes it contains something that you would like to minimize. It's not always adding more to the sound or more bass or anything like that. It's just playing around with stuff. It's not always adding either. It's sometimes it's taking away. There's a part of something that sounds a little boxy, and all this will make more sense here in just a second. As I'm going to now come over here to the inspector, and we got the equalizer going here. And so if you look across the bottom here, you'll see that when I highlight these two ends here, this end of this represents on this side here, this represents volume. On this side, it represents frequency. Slower frequencies between 20 and 20,000 or thereabouts, the slower the frequency, the lower the tone. I guess that's the long and the short of the way to put this. So when we take number 1 over here, we have chosen, one of many ways to start this off with, but generally it's considered to use this frame or this framework to decide what's going to make it in on the low side. These are called filters, and this is a low pass filter and a high pass filter. This lets all the high frequencies by. This lets all the low frequencies by. So this is keeping that at a minimum for the meantime. So let's play our thing here and see if we can hear anything in background. And I'm going to play with this a little bit as we're going across here and just see if we can get it to sound a little bit better, richer, cleaner, whatever. We'll start here.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent
Sounds best to me
bestseller.
there. Okay. Let's reel it back and then try that on the high end now.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my date.
Sounds pretty good to me right there. So now we have these two little guys here in the middle here. So we have two chances with the inspector's equalizer to enhance something or to detract from something here. So let's change our waveforms over. This is one waveform that's great for searching around on the bottom of things. This waveform here is best for kind of where you can bring it up and bring it down here. And with something called Q, when we go over to the equalizer that's in the mixer, we'll be able to adjust how steep either side of this curve is. Okay, so let's see if we can play this back again and find something along here. When we kind of scan along, let's kind of scan through the range of things and see if we can find out and see if we can find an area in here that sounds better when it's enhanced. Okay, so let's try that.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my date.
Let's try that again. I think we're almost there.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my date.
All right, that sounds pretty good. Now let's try it back here and just go off and on a couple times.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my date.
Now, when you kind of hear them in comparison, makes me want to throttle back on some of the adjustments that we've made here.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay, one more time.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller is my date.
Yeah, okay, much better on and much better with the smaller cues on that. So that said, let's go ahead and cut this off and get out of Inspector. And now let's open up our mixer because that's where the big bad boy equalizer lives. And I'm going to have to move this down a little bit here. Just enough so we can get in there and play it. This is big. I don't know why they have to make it so big. There we go. Okay, so when we were looking over there, we only had a couple of these middle bands. We had band 2 and 3 to play with, whereas bands 1 and 4 were our high and low pass filters. So that said, let's go ahead and turn on our filters and give it a quick play again, and then we'll try it with this guy here and see what we can learn about uh, what we're listening to here. Just
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
okay. So I was once told by my sound instructor that pretty much anything that happens below 40 hertz here is nothing. It's noise. You can't hear it anyway. What's the problem with it? So coming above this, hearing it, and then I'm going to make some drastic moves here and see if we can understand the difference.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
So I don't hear a lot of difference there. So whatever we're getting out of it, oh, that's why we're not hearing. Let's turn it on, stupid. Duh. Okay, let's try that again.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller.
Okay. Now let's try that again here. We have our.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world.
So strangely enough, it's going to wind up in about the same area as our other one did. Haha. Okay, let's try our other path.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Right again.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay, having some high in there, I think sounds kind of nice. It gives his voice some range. So the next thing we need to do is we need to grab one of these guys and kind of scan along and see if there's some things that we want to put in, take out whatever. Now, we have 4 opportunities to do that. Are we really going to need all of them? Probably not. This is a pretty simple thing. So let's start with band 2 here and just get these other guys out of the way here. And we'll use them when we need them. So let's go back to this waveform here. So that's band 2, bringing that up since we knew that's kind of where it was on the other guy. And let's sharpen our Q factor a little bit, meaning that let's scan smaller areas of frequency, okay? So that's pretty well maxed out. Let's listen to it and bring it up and just come across and see if there's anything we like or anything we don't like.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world.
Hear that? Okay, that sounded a little bit weird there.
World's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger.
Okay, let's turn our Q down a little bit here. Widen that out. Listen to it again.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest.
Okay, now that's something we decided we liked on the other one, and I decided again just now that that was a nice add. Okay, so let's come over here and grab a band 3, medium high. Let's sharpen up our Q factor on that one. Let's go find that weird area over here where we're starting to sound like we were stuck in a well or you're talking inside of a box.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger
hear
Max,
that?
home of the world's.
Okay, so what if we just brought that straight down and took some of that out?
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
It's subtle. All right, one more time. Let's go over here to band 4 and see if there's anything else that we're fond or not fond of. Again, small moves.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger, the most recent bestseller.
Again, that sounds pretty good. Now, when we got over here to band 5, let's give that some cue. We don't really have any cue on band 5, do we?
Is my day.
Okay, one more time back over here and see if any kind of adjustment to 5 is going to work. And give it change its form so we can have a Q factor on it. Turn that Q factor up. Narrow our search down.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's.
Ooh, that sounds nice. Let's turn our Q down a little bit. See how that.
For the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger.
That's funny how we're getting sort of a symmetrical grain here now, or sort of a symmetrical wave here now. Excuse me.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
That sounds pretty good to me. And one more time, on and off.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
All right, one more time, off and on.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's.
I think off or having it on clears up some of the bass that's in there. It's really bassy on its natural state. This clears it and kind of brings it into a more easier understood voice without turning him into Barry White or anything like that. But anyway, basics of the equalizer, and there is some ways, if I remember right. Let's jump out of here real quick and see if I remember how to do this. All right, I'm going to pause for just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, so a couple of things. If this seems like a voice that you're going to work with a lot and you want to not copy it necessarily, but to have something as a preset for the future, we can go up to Fairlight and come down to the presets library and save one. So if we wanted to save the preset that we're at now, we can come over here and tell it what track we're in, save new, create new. Let's just call this standard voice. Outstanding typing as always. Standard voice, and we'll say okay to that. We can come over here and clear this out, I believe. But at any rate, whenever you get back into something again, and you can come, let's say apply and jump out of here. We can come over to here on this, and I believe you can just come right down and say standard voice, and there is our profile again for most likely the same voice that we were just listening to a minute ago. Obviously not something we want to do, so let's not do that. I think we can just come back and say how about we just X out of it. At any rate, that's the name of that tune. Graphic equalizer, I don't know if I've made my point. I definitely didn't want to teach you how to use this, but I hope that I've conveyed the fact that I'm comfortable using it, and more importantly, I'm comfortable playing around with it, being patient with it. Because that's kind of the thing. There's no way to really teach this other than here's how you kind of do it, mess around with it, see what sounds great. Experimentation is always king when you're working with something as subjective as sound. All right, thanks a lot. We'll see you in the next one, and I think we're doing compressors and limiters and stuff like that next time. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you soon. Okay, here we are on the last couple of things to do for week 5, and we're still on the sound thing here, the fundamentals of Fairlight. And let me just bring this up here. So we're over here, the fundamentals of Fairlight. We're on skills 14 and 15, which is using sound limiters, the sound compressors, and the noise reduction thing. And it's all very, very simple and straightforward, just as long as you know kind of what you're looking at. So I've already set this up here with this guy talking about the restaurant that he goes to every Sunday here, correctly with the markers above it here and dialed in and with the sound that it was recorded at, so that we can get a good idea of what does what. So in the videos, he starts with the limiter, which is probably the easiest of the lot. So I'm going to come over here to effects and then over to the limiter. And I'm going to grab a hold of the limiter and I'm going to bring it over and drop it on, maybe, there we go, and drop it on the clip that we're working with. Then I'm going to twirl the effects up out of the way so we can see what we're doing, kind of. So I'll just leave that here for now. So one of the cool things with most of these tools is that when you have everything marked and done correctly, you can get an idea, or you can execute the play on the clip just by coming up here to the corner and saying loop preview.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week.
Okay, so that is the pretty sure you heard that. At least I haven't changed any settings. So this is without any changes. This is how it comes out of the box. And often they come out of the box when you open them up. They have some little minor preset done to them. This with the ceiling, nothing. So if you recall, he said that about -10 dB is where we want to see the peaking of our dialogue. Monologue, dialogue, whatever. So let's set this over here to -10. Okay. And then the release, I screwed around with this. The release of this is how fast it reacts and lets go of it once it's done. So all we're doing right now is we're not letting the sound pass a certain point. And if the sound does pass a certain point, it's not compressed, but it's just the volume is taken down. So let's listen to it now here, and then let's mess around with some of the settings on this.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay. So you can kind of hear what's going on there, but if we look across our limiter down here, we can see that there's a lot of stuff that we're hearing under the 10 dB break here. So one of the things that you can do to kind of improve that, and I thought that this was quite the improvement. Then after we do this, I couldn't hear anything on how fast things were released or not, but we'll play with that just for the sake that you might hear it. My ears are pretty damaged, so it's hard for me to get a hold of this stuff, and it's much easier to look at the graphs. I believe the graphs. Okay, so I'm going to increase the input here just a touch, and let's play around with it.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at
So you'll
Burger
note
Max,
where
home of the
on the reduction
world's
side here,
greatest hamburger.
we're
The
seeing
most
more of
recent
that, but we're
bestseller
also
is my
hearing
date.
more of everything.
The highlight of my week for the last decade
But
was
on our
having lunch
output
every
level
Sunday
here,
at
we're
Burger
still
Max,
right
home of
at
the
-10
world's
dB,
greatest hamburger.
just right where
The
we
most
set
recent
it.
bestseller is my date.
Now I'm going to put
The
the
highlight of
release
my
all the
week
way up and
for
then
the
all the
last
way down.
decade
We'll
was
see if we
having
can hear
lunch every
anything.
Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
Okay, so let's hear it with and without with the settings that I
lunch
kind
every
of think is
Sunday at
optimal.
Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max.
So here's also some pre-done settings if you want to kind of play around with that and whatever. I did a little bit. It was much better just to listen to what was going on, look at the graph, and figure it out for myself than it was to try some kind of preset thing, which is I'm going to find is kind of true for all of this. So I'm going to reset this back to 0 here, and I'm going to click off on this. And you see this little square here on this? Let me make things a little bit bigger for us to see here. Arr. Okay. So we see the little FX square here right now. That means that there's still currently another effect applied to this, and we don't want anything like that. So they said in the video that you could go over to the inspector and erase it. I don't see how that works, but he was able to come down here all the way to the bottom, and I don't see anything in the inspector that says voice isolation or anything like that. Nothing in here that says limiter. So I'm going to have to experiment with that to figure out how to get that out of there. But what I did find works was just good old Control Z and keep going until you see it dis up here, which was right there. And the next guy that we're going to come up here and play around with, let me just scoot this back over here, reset its size a little bit. There, it seems a little bit more manageable. We'll stick that over here because we're going to bring the inspector up again. We're going to come over here to effects and we're going to come down here to multi-band compressor. Now in my sound class, the compressors that we were using were pretty simple. They were just an input, an attack, a release, and an output, and that's all there was to it. Here is a little bit different in that we can see the different bands of how the sound hits and what we should keep and what we should save. And when he did this, he started off by showing us the low frequency. It's set up exactly the way the equalizer was when across here is frequency, and then up is volume or gain or whatever you want to call it. But let's try this first. We're just going to solo band 1. Come up here and say loop preview. Okay, so there's not, we look at the curve here, there's not a lot happening down here. So let's turn this off now, and we're just going to leave that be. We're not going to mess with it. And so let's come back over here to the high side of things and do the same and listen to once again. So I start hearing his voice about here. Okay. All right, so everything else here, we can turn this off. These guys are turned on. And so the next thing we want to do here is we want to set our limits. Where do we want to be here with this? So, oops. We were at 4.5, and the ratio too. When he was talking about doing the ratios, the ratio means how fast does it recover once that Our threshold or our limit is set. I think he set it at 12. Now that I think about it, we'll set this one at 12 as well. And we'll close that out there. And we'll see where we are with everything in just a second. I'm going to pause this and get it all set up for us. Okay, so we have the limit set at 12. Now that's going to react just like the limit did on our limiter. I guess. And then our threshold is when the compression starts, and the ratio is for every 7 it goes up, it comes down in half the time above negative 25 dB, which is right about here. Okay. So the main thing is here is it's set really high right now, just so that you can kind of hear the responses of it.
The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's
Whether you're doing
greatest
this with
hamburger.
music
The most
or whether
recent
you're doing this with
bestseller is my
dialogue,
date.
I think a
The
compressor
highlight of
sounds
my
the
week
best.
for the last decade was
It makes
having
it
lunch
more
every Sunday
hearable
at
for some
Burger Max,
reason.
home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max,
So
home of the
you
world's
see where we are
greatest
over here
hamburger.
and
The
where
most
we
recent
want our output to
bestseller
be
is
at
my
negative
date.
10. This was a
The
concern of
highlight of
mine
my
that he did
week
not
for the
really
last
address
decade was
here.
having lunch
He
every
left his
Sunday at Burger
thresholds and
Max,
his
home of the
gains where they
world's
were,
greatest
but he
hamburger.
did
The
come
most
back and
recent
he did set the
bestseller is my date.
ratios back down to
The highlight
2,
of my week for the last decade was
which
having
is
lunch every Sunday at Burger
probably a
Max, home of the
more
world's greatest
reasonable place
hamburger.
for a
The most
compressor to
recent
be.
bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week
Now, when
for
I
the
go
last
back through
decade
it,
was
I'm going
having
to
lunch
bring
every
my
Sunday
limit
at Burger
down a
Max,
little
home
bit
of the
too, to
world's
10.
greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date.
And then we're
The
going to do a
highlight
little
of my week
comparison
for the
shopping
last
here.
decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's
Okay,
greatest
you see we're
hamburger. The
peaking at
most
about
recent
10.
bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger.
And our
The most
master
recent
gain there.
bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my
Okay, I
date.
think we got that pretty
The
good.
highlight of my week
All right, so
for the
now
last
let's
decade was
listen to
having
this. I've
lunch
got it
every
on a
Sunday
loop.
at Burger
Let's
Max,
listen
home
to
of
it
the
with it on
world's
and with it off
greatest hamburger.
with
The
some
most
real
recent
settings, the way
bestseller
it
is my
should be.
date. The highlight of my week for the last decade
That's
was
off.
having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent
On.
bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was
Off.
having lunch every Sunday at Burger Max, home of the world's greatest hamburger. The most recent bestseller is my date. The highlight of my week for the last decade was having lunch every
Okay,
Sunday at Burger Max, home of the
so
world's
there's
greatest
that.
hamburger.
Obviously, a compressor can be much more complex than just a little bit I did, but that's what the little bit he did. So, what are you going to do? Um, Hopefully, next week we'll get a chance to do the advanced sound stuff. I've got an email in now that puts off my doing the Apple Final Cut in lieu of doing the rest of these courses here. The color grading's really good, and the sound is just so good. I'm just kind of reinvigorated on how much I love DaVinci Resolve, so I kind of want to stick with this. Plus, I don't want to lose all the hard work I've done on this mentally by switching over to something else. Not to say that I wouldn't, I've got another class arranged for that, so arranged for doing an independent study. So I don't want to lose the flexibility of doing the Final Cut Pro down the road. I just don't want to do it right this second. I'm on a roll, as it were. So speaking of on a roll here, let's get rid of this again. Let's bring everything back to where it was, and let's get out of here. And we see there that there's still another FX thing in here. I wonder what we can do. Add to favorites. You'd think there'd be an easier way to get out of this. Hash audio effects, bounce audio effects. Ooh, that's another good point that you can, when you're up in here in neither the limiter or the compressor, you can go. Oh, that's already on there. So let's have a look at it. you should be able to go down and say bounce audio effect. So once that you've got your compressed piece just the way you like it, you can bounce that out to a second level like we did in the last one around here. So we'll have the unedited version on the bottom and the edited version on the top. And that way you can kind of do that in a non-destructive way rather than going through all these changes and then just leaving them there. Because you never know when you want to go back to the original, or at least to have the original as a point of reference. Okay, so I'm going to figure out how to get out of all this so we can go back over to the other one now. So Control Z. There it goes. Okay, so the last one here is noise reduction, and we don't really have a very good clip to do that on. When he did this on the on the on his tutorial, mine not being tutorials, I'm going to have to tell you about it because I don't have a noisy clip that he used to show this with. So the the quick and dirty way to do this is just to splat show you and see if we can catch anything out of here. I'm also going to bring this out over here a little bit and this off so that we can show something here. Bring this back in. So there's a couple ways to do this. One, we did that. We brought it over there. We see our FX. They know that we're working in there and that something has been added. Again, we have the ability to come over here and we're going to play this in auto sharpen mode, and we're going to listen to see if noise only and see if there's anything on here to actually listen to. And we're going to leave it just the way it is for right now here before we go back and start making some of these um, adjustments here. As you see how these are all blocked out here too, and adjustments 1, 2, 3, 4 are all basically modifications for the auto speech mode, which is for dialogue. And then the manual stuff is over here with dry wet. And of course, the level is for as we do noise reduction, it reduces the overall gain that this clip will put out. Um, so anyway, let's give it a listen and see what we can hear, if anything. Almost nothing. Okay. So this is not a good clip to show you guys this on, but that was we can go through and do this and it did a pretty good job of taking out some really light hiss. And I was mildly impressed with it. When he went over, and one of the reasons I saved this little bit was he went over to manual, and then we went over to here and started it right there. And where'd we click on learn, and then we play it. Okay. And then we come back here and see and take learn off, and then it goes through and supposedly will take what it learned from here with the background noise and then remove it from the rest of the dialogue. Uh, it worked better far and away than the auto speech mode did, and uh, it seems like a thing that you would do for something. I wouldn't want to try to pit it against like an air conditioner or some refrigerator noise or something like that. Um, my personal sound effects stuff that I'm going to demonstrate while I'm actually editing all this together. So stick around for the making of video because there's going to be some cool stuff from a company called Crumple Pop in there. And their tools that we're seeing like this are some next level men in black kind of stuff that I use to, while I'm rolling down the road on a motorcycle, it has pretty loud pipes on it with live narration from a little microphone set up on my helmet. As I'm going down the road at 70 miles an hour, you can hear me just fine with a little bit of engine noise in the background and a little bit of the environment and still hear my voice perfectly. So it's some real heavy duty, thick noise, noise reduction stuff. And I guess the last thing to remember about all of this stuff is here, let's cut out of this, is when we come over here to the mixers, we don't have to enter this stuff at a clip level. We can enter this stuff as we're working over here. We can come over here to dynamics, for example, and enter this stuff at a track level. So we come over here and we highlight our track, come over here and we can click on dynamics, and it brings us up a limiter to work with, and a compressor to work with, and noise gates and all the other goodies to work with. And we're going to do noise gates hopefully in the advanced version of this. I'm really excited to see that. Um, if you'll recall, noise gates is something that we discussed a little bit with OBS that has some filters that we can put in for our microphones. And one of them was a noise gate. So it engaged the microphone above at a certain dB. I think I set it at 18 or 20. So the minute my voice broke that sound barrier, the microphone turns on, and then the microphone turns off a noise a little bit below that. I think I set it at negative 23 or something like that. But that's just a neat thing as a noise gate. It solved a lot of problems for me around the house where I don't hear anything other than what's happening around my microwave pretty close, or my microphone, my microphone pretty close. And so no refrigerator noise, no air conditioner noise, no kitchen appliances noise. It actually kind of stunned me on how well it worked. So let's get out of here and say goodbye over here to Fairlight Fundamentals by Low Post. These guys have been fantastic. I can't wait to do some more, but I hope my request gets put through. And I'm going to do a custom thumbnail for you here in a little bit. And as I'm putting all of these clips together, of which there are many, um, we will uh, do the making of, and I'll show you the other cool stuff that with sound stuff that you can do, or that I've learned how to do so far. All right, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Sure do appreciate you. Have a good one. Okay, so we're back in the closet here in my little Mac Studio, editing this on the Mac Studio. Uh, a couple of things for that. We won't see the keyboard anymore when we're filming back here in the Mac Studio because I just never really could get OBS to work multiple camera well on my Mac. Um, as it does on the PC that you see a picture of on the thumbnail for this video. With the PC, there's some camera settings that I can get it to manually focus with pretty much with the little 4K cameras that I used on there. The sound should be as good as I mean, it's a kind of a high-end microphone in here too, so the sound should be okay. But I'm afraid you're just going to have to put up with the one camera for now, and I'll do my best to describe to you as I go. That said, though, I do have another Blackmagic Design keyboard in here as well, so you'll hear me tapping away on it as we go through, and I'll call out those things as I say them, and you'll see some of it on the screen too. So let me just switch over here to the main here, and this is where we're at. Maybe I should probably just go to the main only and get my face out of here. There's plenty of my face on all this nonsense. So we're just going to work across here. We're all set up and ready to go here with the 13 or so clips that make up this week's saga here, and a couple of them are doubled up and whatnot, but you'll have to watch that. And again, this is the making of. So included in here, you will see me making some color alterations to make sure that everything's color corrected nicely. Some sound alterations to make sure that things are sounding good, and you're going to see me use some of the stuff from Crumple Pop Designs, which is some really nice high-end sound software above and beyond anything that Fairlight or pretty much anybody else could ever do. And that's one of the reasons I'm using the Mac today to film this and share it with you, show you guys what's going on. So let's get to it. As we come over here, let me just get my ugly mug off the screen here. And I guess we're okay. Shoot. Well, let's just start from scratch and double check on everything here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Everything should be in order here. And it's with our code. So clip 1, week 5, skill 1, organization. I just happened to kind of make a little quick 1 or 2 word note of what each one was, since I didn't have the superstructure that I did last time around. Okay, so let's get busy getting some transitions in here and getting our thing started up on the right foot here. Okay, so I'm gonna start it off by rolling into, I don't want to roll into that. Hello and ooh, voice is cracking a little bit. Okay, so as long as we're here, let's put in our opening title, something nice. I wonder what flip over does. Ah, that's nice. I like that. Inspector. Let's highlight that guy. My usual typing skills here. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, easy. All right, so let's pop back here, get things adjusted. Remember that we got to be on that in order to adjust things correctly and make sure that we have our on. So when we want to pop this over to here, because we're going to snap this to the head. Okay. Then we'll go back here and double check and make sure everything hasn't folded in on itself. And looks good. So we'll check the next thing and we'll zoom in. We use our down arrow buttons to just move down the timeline here and use our jog shuttle to and our trim in trim out buttons on the right hand side, left hand side, excuse me, to get everything folded up nicely and then put a nice transition on it. Oh, and we got to hit the. I make that same mistake every time I do one of these here. I got to hit the trim, be in the trim mode to do this correctly. So here we go. There's trimming in and trimming out. And then my left downmost middle button puts our cross dissolve in. Hit my down arrow. We've moved on to the next edit point. We have my hand.
Let's play this.
Hey,
Too much time.
Section 3. Thanks for listening. Hey, and
Okay, let's twirl this up and make ourselves some more room here. So we can better see what's going on. And down arrow moved over to our next edit point. Let's trim in first. And trim out. Yeah, looks about right. Cross dissolve. Quick check.
Okay, still here and
Okay, down arrow. Pretty slick, huh? Time saver to beat the band.
Anyway, see you in a little bit. Hey, everybody. But I may, if I get the patience with me. Okay, and we're back.
Okay. Trim out first. Trim in a little bit. Just have to go over to the. I could, for the first time, touch the mouse here and just get this at a little bit better. Easier to see without having to mouse around all the time here.
I do appreciate you. Okay.
Down arrow. Trim in. Well, I've been giving myself some good handles on this, but it sure does save a lot of time being able to get through all the stuff easy.
And the next one.
Okay, good.
You in the next one. Okay, everybody, and welcome.
Okay, I had a weird sound in here. This came from somewhere. Errant sound. I don't know why I was so.
Next one. Okay, everybody.
I guess not. Must have been my imagination. Trim that up a little bit. Better safe than stupid, I guess, right? Trim this up a little bit. Well, I gave myself a mighty handle on that one, didn't I? And that one too, it appears.
We'll see you soon. Okay, we're back. Okay. Where's it? Please let me stop watching. We'll see you soon. Okay, so here. Now, Thanks a lot. Okay, so here we are. One more time. Back. I see. So we'll see you soon. Okay, here we are.
All right, that went pretty fast, huh? So flip over and do the same thing. And come down here and give this a nice little, no, don't want that there yet. Sorry. Huh. There we go.
Yeah. So far. Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Sure do appreciate you. Have a good one.
Okay, so if we were doing any fusion stuff, effect stuff, we'd be in this one next. We've done our titles, we've done our editing. Let's have a look at some of the coloring of some of this stuff. Let's just kind of spin through it real quick and see what's going on here. There's that one. Probably there's not going to be a lot of color on this stuff because it's mostly black and as it occurs to me. But let's put these clips away here. And just for fun and just for exercise of it all, let's bring up our circles and maybe get rid of our gallery here so we can have some working room. What else should we get rid of? Or can we get rid of? Okay, let's come down here and see our scopes. And we can see that our white balance is pretty far off here. And so I think that we'll come over here to our curves and we'll come over here and hit blue, and we're going to raise the blue up to match the green a little bit. Come on. Yeah, just a little bit. Have a look at red, maybe bring red down just a touch. Bring our green down just a touch too. And then when we start adjusting it like that, we start to get some parity between the three. And that's not a bad white balance. Let's see what this says. Well, we know that's white. And I haven't hit anything on there, so I'm only a couple of points off away from perfect white balance. I'm pretty pleased with that. Let's come downstairs, come down here and see what our lift. Well, we'll start with the gain. See what I don't think there's much really anywhere to go for the gain. Maybe down just a touch. Down on our lift here. maybe back over here. Sit just a tad up on our blue. Back over here to the wheel. Let's look at our mid-ranges. Yeah. That's actually for sure the weirdo color of my room too. And for the record, no, I wasn't the one that painted it. Okay, so we got a basic color correction here. So a couple ways we can deal with this. First, let's bring our clips back up. And, well, now that I look at it, I'm awfully red here. So let's maybe think about bringing this red a little bit out of it. Maybe come back over here and play around with the color boost. That's nicely, that purple shirt really is that color. And let's maybe have a look over here. Oops. Not the parade so much, but at the vector scope. And we can see that my hues and whatnot are pretty far off. So let's play around with our offset and see what we can do about that to see if we can. Let's come over here and first off, let's get that we're on the vectorscope. Let's show the skin tone indicator. Make sure we're showing everything here. All right, maybe mess around with our offset a little bit to see how that flies. Still pretty pink. I'm going to come off of that a little bit. Well, my face is warm, so maybe I am a little on the pink side today, but the curse of being a redhead. Okay, so the trick will be here to figure out how to come up here, and anytime we see these three clips, let's link these three clips. So this is clip. There's a way to link these guys, darn it. Or maybe what we could do is this, haha. So let's grab a still from here. Let's come over to here. And I think apply grade. Come over here, apply grade, boom. So we have three relatively well graded. Yeah. Let's see if applying the grade makes much difference down there. Huh. Oh, so here's the next one. Can we apply a grade to all of them? And it looks like I just replace existing grades, replace. So whether I turn up down here or down there, I was able to apply my color grade across the spectrum all in one thing. I shouldn't say color grade, I should have said color correction. There's no moodiness or anything like that requires any oranges or teals to my little saga here, so I'm going to go ahead and call that good for now. And we're going to move over here to the sound. So the sound here actually sounds pretty good. And I don't know if it's going to let me do. Well, first off, let's just say this. Do I have a leveling problem? The things that I wanted to show you guys, turn you guys onto a little bit, looks like these 6 special effects, sound effects by a company called Crumple Pop. So this is their denoise. This is their echo remover. As you can hear me in the making of video, if I were to remake this, and I may assemble these two here, and just before I put the two together, I may run the echo remover over it. So if you hear echo in here, then that means I didn't figure out how to do it. If you don't hear echo in here, then that means that I have figured out how to do it. How's that? So just for the sake of it, here, let's grab this, drag it over here and onto this. And there we have it, echo remover. And there's our strength of it. And let's play this. And notice it did catch both. You see, you don't have the little dots in there, so it definitely caught both sides of this. So I'm going to twirl this back up real quick and make a little bit more room for ourselves here. Okay, so we have our FX mark on there. Hello and welcome to week 5, and we're going to start off week 5 with DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. And I ran into some trouble with this, with the Udemy classes yet again. Kind of losing faith in these guys a little. Okay, well, apparently there's little or no echo on here to remove, so we can go ahead and cancel out of that. Click and turn it off. So let's click out of here. Come on, click. But it's still there, so I still have not figured out a way to remove these FXs once they've been on there, other short of this. Control zoom. I guess it's command zoom over here on the Mac. So I can't figure out how to get it out of there other than that. This helps you. And FX. So we get you guys he did this before he did anything else. Okay, thanks guys. We'll see you in the next one here in just a little bit when we get started with a tour of Fairlight as done by our new guys. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, and we are back, week 5. We are going to be over here. You know, I guess that's the problem with doing a good job of recording in the first place. So if I play this along, you'll see that our leveling is where it's supposed to be. It sounds good. I don't have any echo. I don't have any buzz. I don't have any noise. I blame a lot of that success on having a very good, um, a very, very good microphone set up in the other room. And then when I record in that other room, there's not a lot of really sharp, flat, hard surfaces in there. There's a bed, there's curtains, there's carpeting, there's a big couch in there. So I've got plenty of stuff for sound to be absorbed by, things to be thankful for. So I'm going to call this good for now. And so I'm going to start to deliver the making of video. I'm going to render this video, and then I'm going to put them both of them together with some signage, and I'm going to go back over and see if I can get the hard, echoey, roomy sound out of that, which is also known in the more dialed in kids know what they're doing, talking about circles as reverb. All right. Thanks a lot for everything, guys. We will see you in the next one. See you soon. Bye bye.